draft weekend is officially over, but it's May 3rd, so that means fifth-year option deadline is here, as the Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers have both declined Leighton Vander Esch and Terrell Edmunds' fifth-year option. And the fifth-year option is more or less of, it's an extra year added to the contract. You get 4 years, but if you're drafted, I know you're an original draft contract, but if you're in the first round, you get what is called a fifth-year option. That means you get an extra year cheaply before having to give the player a big contract, or maybe a long-term contract, a short-term contract, or even if you want him on the team anymore. That only happens with first-round picks, and the Cowboys and Steelers have decided to not do that, which basically puts Edmunds and Vander Esch in a contract year. That's what it means. So it's, you haven't played well, show us that you can play in this year, so we can give you a huge contract or not a contract at all. The Falcons are not picking up Hayden Hurst's contract, fifth-year option, and the Seahawks are expected to decline Rashard Penny's fifth-year option. The Rashard Penny's fifth-year option, though, is because he hasn't played a full season. He only played 3 games last year due to either injuries or wasn't involved in the game plan and was never put in the game. The Bills, however, have picked up both Josh Allen and Tremaine Edmunds' fifth-year options. Because, and this is how I have, Tremaine Edmunds and Terrell Edmunds are brothers. They were drafted in the same draft, in the first round. That's never happened before. Never. Moving to the Broncos, Locke and Bridgewater are expected to battle it out in camp to determine who's the number 1 quarterback. This is a great idea because it usually says that we're going to have the best out of Teddy Bridgewater and the best out of Drew Lock. That's what it means. Just like what they did when Joe Montana and Steve Young were there, we're going to get the best out of Joe Montana, the best out of Steve Young. But those 2 guys are also in the Hall of Fame, and they did during the regular season when this is happening during camp. The Aaron Rodgers issue. To begin, we have to go a little ways. But we can start off right where we are right now. Aaron Rodgers has said in numerous reports that he's not going back to Green Bay. He doesn't want to go back. He's told his teammates and people that he's been close to, he's not going back to Green Bay. It's not because of the fans. It's not because of his teammates. It's not because he doesn't enjoy living in Green Bay, or it's not because he doesn't enjoy being a Green Bay Packer. It's the fact that the front office has not surrounded him enough. And when you get a big contract like Aaron does have, he's making $37 this year, I believe. The difference that Aaron has is he wants a voice in the organization, and he's not getting it. When Brian mispronounced his name, it's not my fault, Gunther, who is the general manager, when he drafted Jordan Love, they didn't tell Aaron Rodgers. He found out when they were on the clock. They didn't tell him. They didn't give him a 5-minute heads up. They just, when they did it, and he's like, oh. And then he said he drank 2 or 3 fingers of whiskey. It was so demoralizing, and then he came out with his best year, probably as a Packer. And according to Rodgers, this is what he believes, that Brian Gutekunst, the general manager, this is what Aaron Rodgers believed was his plan, was during the 2020 season, it would be Aaron Rodgers as the starter, Jordan Love would be the backup. After the 2020 season, Aaron would get dumped by the Packers, and they put Jordan Love in as the starter. That was supposed to be the plan, but then Aaron Rodgers had an MVP year. So then, what ended up happening is Rodgers, in another report, said he's not going back unless the general manager is fired. And then he said, and then the Packers president, because they don't have an owner, so he's the most powerful, says that there is an issue between the general manager and Rodgers. Now, Rodgers has said that he is either going to hold out, so he'll be possible for fine. He'll be fined to the max probably every week, or retire, because his agent told him that the producers for Jeopardy were very impressed with his performance during those 2 weeks. They were the best ratings since the late great Alex Trebek passed away. So, meaning he's probably going to be a finalist for the job. Probably almost get the job. If he's willing to do it, and he said he is. His fiancée is a movie star. He doesn't need to do this anymore. And he still works for State Farm, so he doesn't need to do this anymore. Now, it gets a little more sloppy because before the draft happened, he thought he was going to get traded to San Francisco. And he thought that deal was done and already in the works. And it didn't happen, obviously, because then they drafted Trey Lance. But he thought that deal was actually going to happen, and it did not happen. Now, this would have been huge because fiancée is a movie star. She works in California, so you've been around her. You would play for your childhood team, the San Francisco 49ers, who Aaron Rodgers grew up in Chico, went to Cal, which are both about an hour away from Candlestick Park, and you're in a driving distance between the stadium and to Jeopardy, so that you would only have to work 48, 50 days out of the year. But since that didn't happen, then there was talk that he was gonna get traded to Denver. And that didn't happen because they said it was close to happening. And so imagine what a quarterback room that would have been. Aaron Rodgers, Drew Lock, Teddy Bridgewater. That would have been an awesome quarterback room. That didn't happen. And again, both teams have good to great offenses and good to great defenses. And Rodgers has never had both on each side. Never. So that would be best for him. And then he finds out the Packers are saying that we're not trading him. And he then went to the Kentucky Derby during the draft, during the weekend, with his fiancée, which he told Mike Tirico, who was calling it for NBC, that he doesn't mind. It's not because he's leaving because of the fans or his teammates or anything. It's the fact of the front office, because the front office has never drafted a receiver in round 1. Aaron Rodgers has only thrown to one person who's been drafted in the first round. He's one time for a touchdown, and that wasn't even their pick. That was Mercedes Lewis, who got drafted by Jacksonville, played in Oakland for a while, but then no team was going to pick him up. Packers picked him up for very cheap. He's never had a number 1. Devontae Adams not a round 1 guy. Allen Lazard and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, they're good players. They're just not number 1. They're not round 1 guys. He's never had a round 1 guy. And then you draft A.J. Dillon, who you didn't need because you had Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. So you're drafting positions you don't really need when you need a receiver and you're not drafting one. You can see Aaron's frustrations, and so he's now said that he's not going to Green Bay. He's not going to stay in Green Bay. He'll retire or hold out. This situation is going to get very messy, as it already is. But I do believe that Aaron's not going to be a Green Bay Packer much longer. He'll either retire or get traded. Either way, he's gone. Moving on to the Bears. The Bears are releasing left tackle Charles Leno, who's been their starting left tackle for the last 7 seasons, in a very surprising move. The Bears have said that second-round rookie Telvin Jenkins would be the starter to begin the season. Moving into the draft part of this, I said I would do drafts but I'm going to only do the draft classes for the teams in the NFC East. As the Eagles draft started with, at number 10, Devontae Smith, wide receiver. At 37, Landon Dickerson, offensive lineman. At 73, Milton Williams, defensive lineman. At 123, Zach McPherson from Texas Tech. And they had a fun time with that. The people on the draft shows, they were saying Zach from Tech. Yes, they had had a very fun time with that. Kenneth Gainwell, running back at 150. At 189, don't be shocked that I butchered this last name, but Marlon Tipalutu, defensive lineman. At 191, Tyrion Jackson, edge rusher. At 224, Jacoby Stevens, safety. And at 234, Patrick Johnson, edge. Washington football team draft, 19, Jamin Davis, linebacker. 51, Samuel Cosme, offensive lineman. 74, Benjamin St. Juste, that's right, Canadian wide receiver. At 82, Delamine Brown, wide receiver. At 124, John Bates, tight end. At 163, Derek Forrest, safety. At 225, Cam Cheeseman, long snapper. At 240, Will Bradley King, edge rusher. At 246, Shaka Tony, edge. At 258, Dax Milne, wide receiver. New York Giants draft. Number 20, at 20, Kadarius Toney, wide receiver. At 50, Aziz Ojulari. At 71, Aaron Robinson, cornerback, as Ojulari is an edge rusher. At 116, Ellison Smith, edge. At 166, Gary Brightwell, running back. At 201, Quadarius Williams, defensive lineman. And finally, the Cowboys. At pick 12, the Cowboys select Micah Parsons, linebacker. At pick 44, Kelvin Joseph, cornerback, who was 5'11". At 75, at pick 75, the Cowboys selected Osa Odigizua, defensive lineman. Edge rusher. At 84, Chauncey Golston, edge rusher. At 115, Jabril Cox, linebacker. This fits very well because Micah Parsons, who covers tight ends very well, and linebackers, as a linebacker and covers running backs as well, is more of a pass rusher and a run stuffer. And Jabril Cox is more of a pass coverage guy. So that's going to fit very well. That's also probably the main reason why the Cowboys declined Leighton Vander Esch's fifth-year option. At 138, Josh Ball, offensive lineman. He does have some off-the-field issues, but it seems like the Cowboys are picking more guys that they may have off-the-field issues, but they're picking the best football player that they can at that position. And as you look at him, he's 6'8". He moves very well. It's just he has that off-the-field issues. At pick 99, the Cowboys select Nashawn Wright, cornerback, who is 6'4". The Cowboys picked a few corners that most of them are tall corners, except Kelvin Joseph, who's 5'11", but has great ball skills. At pick 179, the Cowboys select Simi Fehoko, wide receiver, who is 6'4". And the reason why he lasted this long was because he didn't get chances to start. He only started 3 games, but he has good speed for a guy who's that tall, and he can run by you, and he can do all these things. People are expecting he may be, if you don't want to bring back Michael Gallup, he may be the starter, or if you don't want to bring back Amari Cooper, he may be the starter there too. We'll have to wait and see. At pick 192, the Cowboys selected Quinton Bohanna, defensive lineman, and as he said in his own press conference, he said that he's a plug because he's a big man, and the Cowboys are now probably looking at it this way as, we don't need small defensive linemen. We need just a guy who can blow up the hole to make the running back to redirect his route and get stuffed by somebody else. But we need this guy just to push the guy backwards. Number 227, and if I butcher this name, I'm going to try to make it as close as I can. Israel Magmuka, or Mamua. I think it's Magmua. He's a cornerback who also played safety. He's 6'4". He has good speed, but he also played safety. So we could see what if he makes the move to safety, which he said he'll be okay with. And finally, at 236, which was their final pick, was Matt Fronoke, inside offensive lineman. Now, the reason why I say inside offensive lineman, he played all the positions on the offensive line at Nebraska. I don't know much about Matt Fronoke, but I do know he played all the positions. He was talented at age, and the fact that he lasted this long makes almost 0 sense. But that shows you no one's really watching Nebraska tape. Now, in terms of draft grades, I give the Cowboys, in terms of, they drafted 8 defensive players, and the first 6 picks they drafted all defense. So, in terms of that, an A. But over the part of the whole draft, I'd say a B, B+. I think it was very good. I think there was some issues, but I think it was very good. And to get the people that where they were, even though they may have been a little lower, they could have gotten drafted a little lower. You just try to draft the best players that are there, and that's what they did. For the Giants, I think they drafted very well. They traded back, got a lot of draft capital for the following drafts. I say they got about a B, B+, around the same as the Cowboys. I think they did very well. They filled their needs, and they got more draft capital in the future. It's a good move. For the Washington football team, I'm going to give it an A- to a B+, because they filled positions very well. It just seemed though like they did a good approach in terms of just letting the picks come to them, but they moved sometimes, but it didn't seem like they did enough to get a lower A, but not enough to get like an A+ for me. And for the Eagles, I'm gonna give it a C+, mainly because of this. I think their draft started tailing off a little bit. They got positions, they got a few guys here and there, but they did not fix really any of their main issues. And some of their guys are all over the place. And we wonder just who's going to be the starting quarterback and what is going to happen exactly. But what do you guys think? What would your draft grade be for the NFC East? Put it in the comments below. You decide.